When you play investor, that you can't become the operator of the business. I have to be conscious of, coaching them up and telling them, hey, maybe you should think about this, instead of being very dictatorial in my coaching and mentorship.
It's not just capital, it's mentorship. I think 70% of entrepreneurs that have gone through accelerators say that the mentorship is the most valuable thing that they get.
When I evaluate founders, I'm looking for founders that can be resourceful.
Each exit that I had was very, very different each time. So I think Ahmed said it best, hey, for a certain percentage of the company, you will give us certain resources. All right, welcome back, everyone. How's everyone's LA Tech Week going so far? Oh, we're gonna have to try that one more time, guys. How's LA Tech Week going so far? It's good? Yeah. So a couple of things before we get started. I just wanna first recognize that we're all here on a Saturday afternoon, right? Learning about startups. Isn't that awesome? Like, do what you love what you do, right? Second, I gotta thank Laurel. During that break, I don't know if you guys saw, there was a mini bar near the back. Did you guys see that rope that said no one under 21 allowed? That was actually for my son. He was actually gonna be here. He's 15 years old, wanted to be here so badly, and just because of him, because he's underage, they had to get that whole roped section off. But guess what? He had marching band this morning at 6 a.m., by the way. So don't say I didn't, play Mr. Dad this morning too, but we have a great panel for you guys. I also want to put some ground rules up. I know the lights are really bright up here, and it's really dark outside. Some other panelists have come up and told me. Let's make this interactive. If you guys have questions, right, raise your hand. You guys can ask some questions too. And let's have some fun. I saw some people on the panels before us. They wanted to cheer. Right? Someone said something really awesome and they wanted to clap, and then all of a sudden it was like a library in here. And then they were kind of like, oh, maybe I shouldn't say anything. But if you guys have some input, you guys want to say something, you guys want to cheer or even boo the panelists, feel free, right, guys? We're fair game. But this panel is really, really awesome, near and dear to my heart. It's about accelerators, right? So I'm gonna get a quick feel for the room here. How many people here are just startup founders in general? Let's get a feel. A couple hands, that's good. How about investors? Investors, okay, there are other 25%. How about just startup enthusiasts? Everybody's hands, right? You're in the wrong place. No, I'm just kidding. So this is great. So we have 3 types of accelerators on stage. And so I want to get to the nitty-gritty of what an accelerator is. And I love the panel before, right? The panel before us was called the exit, right? So just to quickly summarize for maybe first-time founders, or maybe people who are just interested in startups, there is only, to my count, I'm oversimplifying here, there's only 4 really outcomes to a startup, right? 1, you're gonna go IPO. I think Spencer mentioned that in the last panel. 2, you're gonna get acquired, right? 3rd, if you wait long enough and raise enough money, you're probably gonna go belly up, right? And 4th, it could be a really awesome lifestyle business, right? Kind of like what Spencer's friend's doing right now. So in the midst of all that, right, I think a lot of people have always, well, and for venture anyways, you don't need to raise capital for option 3 and 4. But for 1 and 2, maybe going for the IPO, the moonshot, or getting acquired, what if you're a first-time founder, right? The topic today is unicorn factory, right? Which basically means that there's some sort of process, right, in getting to that unicorn status, getting acquired, going IPO. I'm gonna let you guys go first in introducing yourselves, and then talk about the accelerator type that you run really quickly. So, start, Ahmed.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ahmed Mirza. I am an investor at Techstars. I run our programs out of LA. So Techstars LA, Techstars Healthcare, and Techstars Space. Over the last 2.25 years, I've invested in 96 companies across kind of the spectrum. Techstars, we're a global accelerator. Our goal is to bring companies into our startup bootcamp for 13 weeks at a time, accelerate their growth, and sort of, get them growing.
Hi, everyone. My name is Patrick Petty. I'm the CFO and head of venture growth at UpLabs. So we describe ourselves as a venture labs that partners with the world's largest corporations to solve their biggest problems by creating startups. So some of our corporate partners include Porsche, Alaska Airlines, JB Hunt, and we have a slightly different model than the typical accelerator. So we usually create a 2 to 3 year partnership with these large corporations. We launch approximately 2 startups a year with those corporations. And our thesis is really taking the biggest assets that we have of the corporate partner, which is their problems, and combining that with the world's best entrepreneurs. So we're not a typical accelerator where you'd apply and come spend time with us. What we do is we spend about 6 months coming up with as many problem areas that we see within these corporations, and then starting to think what types of businesses could be built around them, and then narrowing those down with a corporate partner until we decide on 2. And then we spend 6 months building those MVP prototypes, working on a arm's length enterprise license agreement with these corporate partners, getting product market fit, and then bringing a CEO in to then run with these startups when we launch them. And we usually typically launch them with our capital partner with $4 to $5 million. And to date, we're pretty young firm. We started about 2.5 years ago. And so by the end of the year, we'll have approximately about 10 companies live with about $50 million invested in them.
Everyone, I'm Jason DeMello. I'm a professor at Loyola Marymount University, and I've been there for about 10 years. And about 5 years ago, I took over as the director for our incubator. And our incubator takes in 10 companies every semester. They get class credit, they get some funding, and we try to help get them ready to join programs like Techstars. But we also take businesses that are not necessarily trying to be a unicorn. We try to instill an entrepreneurial mindset and help support any student entrepreneur, whether they come from our entrepreneurship major or the science school or film and TV. But we've so far had about 150 companies that have launched over the last 10 years. We just got this data from the Princeton Review rankings. And 110 of them are still in business over the last 10 years. And they've gone on to raise about $460 million. So that's a little bit of background of our program.
That's awesome. And so what these funds or accelerators have all in common is that they have P. Diddy as their LP. No, I'm just kidding. Can I get these mics on? I'm just kidding. These are still on, right? Come on, guys. All right. So let's get into stuff too soon. Is it too soon? So one thing I wanted to ask you guys. So the typical, you can see the 3 types of accelerators. We have Techstars, which I think has made pretty a big presence in the number of startups you guys have funded and come alongside. We have Patrick, who's doing a corporate partnership with an accelerator model where there's companies that are being built for these companies. And then you have Jason for like education, right? At LMU, running it with the students. So myself, my name is Joshua. I'm a recovering CPA by trade. And then I started a venture studio myself. So had 2 venture funds and then became a founder myself, right? In understanding that, hey, we spin off some companies, we could actually start building with accelerators and maybe potentially exit even faster if we own more of that majority stake. But one thing I want to know, and by the way, as a founder, it's been very interesting trying to understand the exit. And so one of the things that I had a problem with as a founder, and I've had 9 exits in the process, it was really difficult to not know what I didn't know as a first-time founder, or even second time or third time, until you've actually had and even gone through the exit. And each exit that I had was very, very different each time. So I think Ahmed said it best, hey, for a certain percentage of the company, you will give us certain resources. Can you guys talk about what those resources are? The pros and cons of each of your accelerators. So try to do the pros, which will be the easy part, but really self-evaluate yourself too. What type of founders would be good and maybe not so good for your type of accelerator?
Yeah, this is a good question and something I go through twice a year when we bring in founders into our cohorts. So I think the sell to founders is pretty simple. It's capital, community, and coaching. That is what we do at Techstars. We've been doing that for better part of 20 years now. I think in total we've accelerated 4,000 companies worldwide. and the portfolio's value now is north of, I think, 120 billion. So, we have many unicorns in the portfolio as well. So I think when I evaluate founders, I'm looking for founders that can be resourceful, right? I don't know the answer, right? My goal is to coach you and to ask questions and to help you think about the things that perhaps you're not thinking about. And if the impression of the founder is, oh, this is going to be like school and I'm going to get all the answers here and then I'm going to walk away with a startup that is fully funded at the end of the program, that's not the reality. We're looking for people that are resourceful, that can put the building blocks together and build something great.
Yeah, for us, we're a little different in regards to the individuals we come in to take these companies and then run with them once they're funded are usually proven founders. 1 to 2x times of success, usually later in their career, and that are drawn to working with us because some of them have been incredibly successful and they just want to be an entrepreneur again, but they don't want to spend another 3 to 5 years in that super early stage of a startup, trying to get product market fit, trying to get your first big enterprise customer, and maybe making a 10 to 15 year commitment. So when our CEOs come in, right, in theory, it's a product that's been baked for a year with this corporate partner. It's been a big enough problem that we said, hey, this is a problem for not only Porsche, but the entire OEM space. So for us, that means it's a $100 million opportunity within 3 years. Our corporate partners, most of them have a purchase right after 3 years to buy it at fair market value. So our CEOs are coming in saying, you know what, I like the fact that there's money in the bank, there's product market fit, there's a commercial contract with the corporate partner ready to go on day one, and it's my job to scale this. Not growth stage scale, but to build a team and get to the first $5 to $10 million of revenue with the idea that there's an exit probably in 3 to 5 years.
Get my resume ready. Okay, that's great. How are you, Jason?
So we're a little more early stage, obviously, and I think we're in a middle school auditorium. Can you guys believe this is a middle school auditorium?
It's amazing.
But we start with like kids. We have summer programs for kids that are coming to LMU to learn about entrepreneurship and financial literacy. We work with people that have been in business for 20, 30 years that join our program with Ascend, trying to grow their small business and scale it. That program's called Ascend LA. And then my incubator, it feeds off of programs like Techstars Startup Weekend, which is going on right now at LMU as they're all morning, and students are forming their teams. They're hopefully finding co-founders and finding product market fit, and then they'll be applying to my incubator through the Fred Kieser Center for Entrepreneurship in a couple months. And the qualities that we get a lot of applicants, but we look for folks that have strong goals and they want to accomplish something through our network, through our resources. It's not just capital, it's mentorship. I think 70% of entrepreneurs that have gone through Accelerators say that the mentorship is the most valuable thing that they get through Accelerators. So we try to bring people like actually all of you who are in this room. Like I'd love for you to come to our campus, come to our showcase that we're going to have on December 4th, meet our founders, give them some guidelines. And but we also have alumni that come back. So the most famous company that's come out of LMU has been Liquid IV. Are you guys familiar with Liquid IV? Brandon was a student. He was a golf student athlete at LMU. Had a big interest in entrepreneurship. Had a summer internship after he graduated. Got the idea for Liquid IV while working for the Diamondbacks. Came back and his professor let him into the incubator class as an alum. And he worked with students at a very small scale. They were shelving the gas stations with Liquid IV back in the day and rearranging the shelves in grocery stores. And then it took 10, 15 years to find their success. But we get students from all along the spectrum, very, very early stage and very, very late stage.
That's awesome. One of the things I don't know if everyone knows is the mechanics of how either a venture fund works or even for an accelerator. So let me give you an example. We had a startup, one of my earliest ones, worked with a VC and she was fantastic. She was very laid back, she was chill, but she gave us all the guidance that we needed, went through some sort of curriculum. Fantastic. So we said, mental note to self, the next time we do another startup, we're definitely going back to this VC, right? So we did, right? This is maybe startup number 4 or 5. But the experience was completely different, right? This time we had almost weekly meetings. We felt we were micromanaged. The atmosphere was very, very different, but it was the same venture fund. And one of the things I took note of was I actually didn't understand how a venture fund actually works, right? Being on the founder side for as long as I have. So meaning there's a general partner, there's limited partners, then there's this nebulous thing called a carry, which is where the partners get to share in that. So one of the things that I noticed was, hey, I could put 10 million into a startup, it could do 10x, but the fund is 100 million. So guess what the partners get out of that 10x? 0, right? So literally, I didn't know that they had to actually meet the actual amount of the fund in order to get a percentage of the carry. So for an accelerator, is it operate the same way where they're gonna get the same Ahmed today versus if they're in fund number 3? Because when we were in the first fund, we were their first investment. They're like, Josh, it's a 10-year fund, relax, we have plenty of time. When we went back to this very VC fund, we were at the tail end. And their earlier investments didn't work out as well. And they were like, Josh, we need that 20, 30x. So we're gonna basically veto any offer you get that's not 20 or 30x. So from an accelerator, is that very similar, or how does the accelerator work?
Yeah, it's a little different. So in the sense that we have a formal corporate team that manages LP relations, they manage the fund across all the Techstars programs. And then as an individual director of the program, when we come up with the 12 startups that we want to invest in, we make a call to the central team and say, hey, these are the companies that we want to bring in. And then we go through a formal investment committee process, present the pros and cons for the investment, and then get a green light. So it is a little different in the sense that, the carry that we're getting is coming from the central fund, and then the central fund is managing the overall LP relationships.
Yeah, so for us, we have a VC partner, a great partner called Up Partners, and they invest and look at our companies that come out of our labs just like they would like any other investment. So they have GP meetings about deciding whether they want to put money into these startups throughout the year. And so in theory, by the time we greenlight the idea to build them, the fund is bought in and stuff. And so they operate like any other fund. For us at the lab side, everyone is at Up Labs because they get a little piece of equity in all the startups that we build. And so they're getting basically founder shares, restricted stock, at a purchase price of almost 0. And so it's very aligned in regards to what ideas we build, and then once the companies are spun out, helping them after because they own stock in it. So for us on the lab side, it's basically the same financial metrics as a founder.
We don't take equity, so there's nothing like that. The money that we give students is thanks to some generous alums that have made a fund together so that I can help pay their legal expenses, help them get their IP, things like that. But we don't take any equity.
So maybe Jason's everyone's best friend then. In that case, no, I'm just kidding.
I'm the only professor I think that I know that gets to give students money instead of grades. So.
Nice. So tell us about, you guys have much successes, you're pretty early new on. What are some crazy learnings you guys have had? Working with the particular, I know you guys have your own verticals. We can tout all the successes. Can you name or maybe share why, again, this is an exchange for value add that you're giving to the founder, and founders that may be new to this. Can you think of some examples to share why it would be worth, at least speaking to the founders, why it would be worth that exchange, whether you guys help make that difference or maybe a learning that you guys shared with some of the founders?
Yeah, so I think for me, my background, I've been a founder multiple times over. I was also an EIR at a number of venture studios. And I think the learning for me is that when you play investor, that you can't become the operator of the business, right? As much as you want to help, as much as you want to guide the companies to reach greatness and to accelerate their development, I have to be conscious of, coaching them up and telling them, hey, maybe you should think about this, instead of being very dictatorial in my coaching and mentorship. So that is, that's sort of what the biggest learning I've taken away.
I think for us, it's probably 2 buckets. One is just the model itself, what we talked about before in regards to, hey, I'm gonna step in and be CEO here, and I already have revenue waiting for me, money in the bank, product market fit, and so that's not the same as me going and starting an idea. And so obviously those founders are not getting 100% of the company. They're coming in and getting a good percentage and a big ESOP for their team to run and go with it, but they didn't have to put that year, 2 or 3 years into getting that product or that company to a certain stage. I think the other value we bring is that we built a pretty big portfolio, or pretty big platform of portfolio services. So we have fractional HR for basically at cost, legal, accounting, help on the revenue side as a fractional BD person. And so we try to let the CEOs focus on growing the company commercially and the product, and not worrying about kind of the stuff that can really suck up a lot of time.
I think for me, it's a lot of it's confidence, helping young entrepreneurs get confident in pitching their ventures, learning. We take students all around the country for these pitch competitions, and they compete against other universities, and they have to pitch in front of investors from different regions of the country, and that can be really educational. But learning how to deal with hard questions during those pitches can be really educational and build some of that confidence. I had a student who went to a networking event, probably similar to this, and he had a space tech company, and he met a guy who told him his idea was awful. And he was a Caltech PhD, and he was a world-renowned expert in this. And so the student came to class the next day, like dejected, and wanted to give up. And I said, why don't you write him and use a sense of humor and tell him that you want to buy him a beer or take him a coffee and learn more about why your idea is that bad. And he did it, and the guy actually took a liking to him and became his first investor. Nice. And they have a great relationship now. So I think just teaching founders how not to be defensive and how to come into new environments, learn, interact with people, and find ways to get value outside of just pitching for funding or kind of being too laser focused.
All right. I think we're at time. But I want to thank the panelists for their insights, number one. And two, I just want to commend, this is happening in Silicon Beach here. This is all in LA. So there's talks of, the YC and some of the other ones up north. We're down here making it happen. So kudos for sharing your insights. How best to reach out to them maybe afterward if you guys stick around at the next session. But let's give them a round of applause. Thank you for their time and their insights.
Thanks,
guys.
Josh.
Thanks.